make the profile geared towards your audience. You want to magnetize the people who you want to attract. So think of your profile as a magnet that attracts your dream clients, that attracts the people that you want to get to know, like, and trust and do business with, and repels the people who you don't want to attract.
Welcome to Sales Founders, the Entrepreneurs Podcast for accelerating sales growth. Join us as we interview VCs, entrepreneurs, and industry experts to explore strategies that will help you conquer the sales gap and generate scalable revenue. Here's your host, Brad Harker.
Hello and welcome to Sales Founders. I'm your host, Brad Harker. It's good to be with you this week. Thank you for tuning in. I'm excited about our topic today, but before we get into it, a quick reminder, if you haven't yet, check out last week's episode with Matt Falcinelli. We were talking about the topic of disruption and how Matt is taking on a $90 billion industry. So a fantastic episode if you haven't checked it out already. Also, a quick reminder to subscribe to the show, and please share episodes out with entrepreneurs and founders in your network. If these are creating value for you, or you know founders that could use this content, please share it out. And on to today's episode. LinkedIn has become a powerful platform for entrepreneurship. Whether your objective is exposure or lead generation, LinkedIn should be a significant part of your growth strategy. My guest this week is nationally recognized LinkedIn expert Yakov Savitskiy. Yakov is the founder of Linked Lead Enterprises and joins me to explore 10 ways you can leverage LinkedIn to develop or accelerate sales growth. We talk about things like the 3 Ps of a great profile, 8 publishing best practices, how to be more visible to your target audience, and how to use LinkedIn in your sales funnel. Tons of great content on this episode. So with that, I'm pleased to welcome Yakov Savitskiy. Yakov, welcome to the show.
Hey, happy to be here.
Thank you for taking some time. I'm excited to introduce you to the listeners. To kick things off, though, why don't you take a few minutes and let's kind of go back in time. Give us some background and what's led up to kind of what you're up to today.
Sure. So to start, I was born in a country called Lithuania, which is over east of Russia. I came over to the U.S., used to live in Atlanta. I came over at an early age. And, I always had this dynamic of growing up in an immigrant family. I was really the first one in my family to do a lot of things. I was the first one to go to school in the U.S. I was the first one to go to university in the U.S. I was the first one to take the U.S. driving test. So all the little things, all the parts of growing up that a lot of people, have done for multiple generations, I was fortunate enough to where I got to be the first to do a lot of things in my immediate family. So that led to a couple different things. I think that led to a couple different developments in my character. There was that willingness to just go out there and make that commitment first and then just figure the rest out later. I've always had a knack for doing that. And I also always knew that I wanted to do something with business. I remember being in the car with my great uncle. I was around 13 years old, and he asked me, as adults would ask us, what do you want to be when you grow up, right? Don't we all love that question? So he asked me, and I told him I wanted to be a businessman. And I'll never forget, he told me, everybody wants to be a businessman. And it was kind of a cynical response. And I look back now and I really think there's some truth to that. I think everybody deep down at some point or another wanted to be a business person, had that dream or that ambition, no matter how far-fetched or imagined that reality was for some people. So I think everybody had that deep down, and I had it, and that desire grew more and more. Even as I was in high school, I knew that I wanted to start my own business. I just had this this desire, and I started developing certain skill sets where I started learning about the art of influence. I started learning more about human psychology and communication dynamics, and I was always intrigued by everything to do with influence and marketing and sales. Ended up working in sales for a software startup and doing a lot of cold calling. And that's really what led me to this whole LinkedIn marketing thing. That's where it really started to take off, because I had been on LinkedIn for quite a while. I'm in that generation where I had social media when I was in middle school, literally. So social media isn't new to me at all. Now, LinkedIn is something I got into when I was still in university. And the first time I made money on LinkedIn was actually through connecting with someone who was in the fraternity and doing some work for his company. So I knew there was something to it. And I remember when I first started on LinkedIn, just being surprised at all these C-level executives, all these influential people who would want to connect with me. And that absolutely blew my mind, and it kind of, set off a chain reaction. And so back to when I was doing sales for the software company, rather than cold call, I started using LinkedIn to prospect, to build relationships, and it proved to be especially huge for finding strategic alliances and for developing distributorships. I know that's huge to even a lot of the listeners in the software space or who want to be in the software space. Distribution is such a huge thing, and LinkedIn helped a lot with that as well. And so I realized as I was going through that process that a lot of small business owners in the local community had no clue about any of this online stuff, let alone any of these LinkedIn marketing strategies. And so I started pretty casually taking on some clients, and I just had a feeling that if it worked so well in the B2B space, that even locally in a local market, B2C, it would be even easier. And I was right. I was actually surprised at how quickly they were able to see results. And since then, to make a long story short, I've gone virtual. At this point, I'm nationally recognized. I even have people reaching out to me on a daily basis from across the world. And yeah, I've got a book coming out here real soon, and LinkedIn marketing, I'd like to think I'm as good as anyone in the world at it.
I'm excited. The good thing is I really want to dig into some of the strategies and some of the things that you figured out over the course of it, because LinkedIn's, it's kind of a mystery to me. I've been part of LinkedIn. I was an early adopter, and I've never really, I always kind of saw it as as a resume and a place where I would just connect with people, but I was never good at generating traffic and business from it. And so why don't we kind of start off, what were some of the biggest pain points that you saw people facing when it came to LinkedIn?
Well, I hear what you just said. I hear that quite often, even from big time salespeople, even from big time consultants, executives. I've worked with clients across the board from the typical B2B company to information marketers, so coaches, speakers, authors, consultants, and some pretty huge names in the field, actually. So that's the story that I hear a lot is people were on LinkedIn just because they heard they were supposed to be there. So everyone pretty much has a profile. And the old way of looking at LinkedIn was looking at it as a resume. It was about thinking that this is a platform that you just have to be on. And for people like us, Brad, we're not really looking to get recruited by anybody. So right. There's really, if we look at it as a resume, there's no reason for being there. What people are starting to realize, and what I'm really pushing in this new way of utilizing LinkedIn, this is what I call an opportunity-rich environment. So the average, I'll give you a couple stats here that'll resonate with everyone listening. Average LinkedIn user earns $115,000 annual household income. So people on LinkedIn tend to be a little bit more affluent, and they tend to be there for a couple reasons. They're there to learn, network, and grow. Those are the three big reasons. As opposed to Facebook, Instagrams of the world, people are generally there for entertainment. So if you're somebody who has any interest in connecting with C-level executives, key influencers, decision makers, LinkedIn is really the platform for you, because that's the intention of these people who are logging on to LinkedIn. I haven't heard of anybody who's going to LinkedIn just to look at cat videos. People are going there very intentionally.
It seems like people go to LinkedIn because it's a safer place to network. And
we do business with people we know, like, and trust, whether it's business to business or business to consumer. That's human nature. There's this concept that I'm a huge proponent of that I've recently put a word on. I call it the law, right? So there are these deep-rooted foundations, these fundamentals of human psychology that pretty much dictate sales and marketing, whether that's one-to-one, one-to-many, whether that's marketing, advertising. These laws essentially dictate the way things work. So to think that you can pitch people and come up with the perfect message is just plain naive. Now, there are people who will bite on the bait if the pitch is solid, concise, and there's certainly best practices there, just like there are in sending cold emails or even making a cold call. The fact of the matter is there's the 97-3 rule that applies to marketing, and it's prevalent on LinkedIn as well. And this is a rule that I learned from a very savvy marketer out there. And when he told me this, it made so much sense to me. And this is a rule that pretty much applies across the board. So I'll share it with everyone here.
Yeah.
And that rule is this. It's really thinking about the marketing funnel. So we think about the structure, the whole funnel shape. So imagine the funnel. At the bottom of the funnel, you have people who become clients. And so 3% of people who you come across, who your marketing message comes across, whether that's a pitch on LinkedIn, whether they see an ad, whether you get them on the phone, 3% generally are ready to buy. They're ready to pull the trigger either with you or a competitor who offers a similar product or service. And the mistake that a lot of businesses make is they only sell to that 3%. They only market to the bottom of the funnel, where the real opportunity lies, where the long-term growth opportunity lies, especially for startup type companies. If they can figure this out, how do you market to the other 97% who are more top funnel, who aren't ready to buy yet, who, however, want to be aware, who have some interest, and who are qualified? That's really a key thing. And a lot of the strategies that I teach are about getting to those people who could be top funnel, getting them through the bottom of the funnel, and filling the top of that funnel through LinkedIn as well, not just the bottom funnel of people to pitch on, closing the transaction, if that makes sense.
So speaking to that 3%, how are most people marketing to that 3%?
What's happened is especially a lot of decision makers, right? The C-suite level executives, the people who most startup founders want to reach, people who are dream types of clients. What happens is they get so overwhelmed by these spammy type of messages from people like, I always use the classic example of the Indian SEO companies. And if you're an Indian SEO company listening, nothing against you. I'm sure you're great. I mean, I'm just using an easy to understand example. So they get pitched by these Indian SEO companies, and the message usually goes something like this: Hi, we are SEO company. We do great service. This is what we offer. Let's set up a call. And it's like, it's zero value. There's zero know, like, and trust. And it's completely 3%. And the naivety, and I always laugh. What I've started doing recently is when someone sends me a pitch message, I send them this word for word. I say, "Is this a joke?" ? That's what I send them, because it's so dumb and stupid to me.
Yeah.
That when I see it, it's just comical to me. Like the other day, there was a guy. He was the founder of a cannabis company, and that industry is quite an intriguing industry to a lot of people. It's certainly got potential. This gentleman, as soon as I connected with him, or he even connected with me, he sent me, and I kid you not, probably 3,000 words in his LinkedIn message talking about all the features and benefits that he had to offer, and asking me to, I don't even know what the call to action was, but there was something there. And it was horrible. It looked horrible. It felt horrible. And there was zero value there. And the odds of that working are, pretty much slim to none in a lot of the cases.
Yeah. So what would you say are maybe some of the biggest opportunities that most people on LinkedIn are missing out on, especially as it comes to lead generation? Maybe that's a good place to start. I'm a business owner. I am looking to tap into LinkedIn to generate my target audience and generate business. What do most people miss out on that's available to them?
Well, the first thing is we have to talk about the profile, right? You want to take your profile from the old way of looking at LinkedIn, is looking at a profile as a resume that just talks about your accomplishments. Yeah. Now, this new way that I teach is more about make the profile geared towards your audience. You want to magnetize the people who you want to attract. So think of your profile as a magnet that attracts your dream clients, that attracts the people that you want to get to know, like, and trust and do business with, and repels the people who you don't want to attract. And the way to do that is to really use what's considered direct response style marketing. It's a concept in the marketing space. And I know, growth hacking is a term in the startup world that gets thrown around a ton, probably overused. And direct response marketing and growth hacking, they sort of go hand in hand, because this is top funnel marketing, and this is really creating something where that person reads it and the words coming out of their mouth or the words in their head should be, "This is for me."
Yeah.
You get that those are 4 big words. If your profile can make somebody think or say those words, that's the objective there. And that's how you use your profile and begin to magnetize that audience. So the profile, we could get super technical and literally talk for hours, and I've got programs and different things that go into great detail. Now, the most important parts of the profile, I call them the 3 Ps: presence, positioning, persuasion. If your profile accomplishes those 3 Ps, then it is well on its way to working for you, not working against you. And some of the most important parts of the profile, obviously the photo, the headline, the summary, we could go into detail on all those things, recommendations. The LinkedIn profile, what's different about the LinkedIn profile as to any other social media platform out there that's prevalent anyway, is there are so many different aspects. A Facebook profile, you kind of get what you get. Instagram, it's just photos. LinkedIn, it's got so many different components, and it's really built, when used the right way, as a marketing piece. You can make it a marketing piece for you and for your business.
So let's walk through those 3 Ps again. You've got presence is your image. It's the the pictures you use. Positioning is how quickly do people understand what it is you do, and persuasion, is that the last one?
Persuasion, right?
What? Let's go through there. How do you create a persuasive profile?
Well, it's all about authority marketing. You have to position yourself as an authority, as the absolute expert in your space. A lot of people in business are frustrated. Here's a big pain point about commoditization, about price shoppers, people who are willing to just buy on price. And it feels like it's hard to get the upper edge. And there's a concept out there really quickly that we can go into. It's called blue ocean marketing. It's a concept that I'm sure, Brad, you may be familiar with, and I know a lot of listeners may be familiar with. For those of you who aren't, what it is there's two different ways to play this marketing game, if you will. Number one is what most people do. It's the red ocean. So let's say you were an SEO company, just to use that example. And if you do what every other SEO company does, you send the cold emails, you spam people, you advertise where everyone advertises, you cold call, then you're playing the red ocean. The red ocean is pretty much a nasty kind of place. It's bloody, it's brutal, it's a grind. There's really no joy there. It's not a place where you want to be. Where you want to be is you want to be in the blue ocean. It's a calm, peaceful, tranquil place, and that's where no one's really playing. So you want to be applying techniques and strategies that are different than your competition, because the blue ocean is not saturated, and the blue ocean is really where the cream of the crop, the top people in their field, are really playing. So we were just talking about we're talking about persuasion on the profile and authority marketing. So when you become that authority, when you position yourself in your company as that expert, you begin playing in the blue ocean, because that expertise, you start to see value outweighing price. You start to get past that commoditization. That's really the sweet spot that you want to get to, and that LinkedIn profile is a piece to really utilize towards moving there. And that's really the persuasion piece. And also another big thing is having the right calls to action. The call to action almost never should be, hey, go buy my stuff. The call to action can be all sorts of different offers, right? You want more top funnel offers. So those can be a number of things. Those can be giving something away for free. Whether it's a consultation, cheat sheet, some people give away books. I just wouldn't recommend having that call. And that's another issue with the pitch messages, is oftentimes the call to action is to either get on a call, which obviously that's a sales call. I mean, no one's not that naive to think that the call is just not a sales call, and no one wants to be sold, especially when there's no relationship. So you lose a lot there. And the next piece of that is, some people will flat out ask the person to buy or invest, and it's just silly to me to have that, because that's a bottom funnel call to action. Only people in the bottom of the marketing funnel will be receptive to that kind of call to action.
Yeah. Let's talk about marketing or advertising on LinkedIn. It's a place that I've never really explored. Seems like Facebook has some really cool features. Talk to us. What's been your experience with advertising on LinkedIn, and who's it for, and how do you do it properly?
That's a great topic. So I'll give you a little bit of an overview. It's getting there, right? So my experience, and from what I've seen from clients and other people, other case studies out there, it's getting there. It used to be a lot more difficult. Now there's some really neat features. So LinkedIn ads, you can run them a couple different ways. My preference and my recommendation, if you're going to be advertising on LinkedIn, and I actually have an article that I wrote specifically about this question, so people can check it out. It's under my LinkedIn profile. It's called "Should You Be Advertising on LinkedIn?" And the answer is most people shouldn't. I'll be honest with you, Brad, most companies, most marketers don't know how to make a great ad. So you need a couple different components for an ad to work. I would recommend doing sponsored content. I would recommend knowing your numbers as closely as you can before you even run the ad. And I would recommend, no one, no matter how genius a marketer is, unless the ad's already tried and proven, unless the funnel already works, LinkedIn isn't the place to experiment with an ad, because that's going to be very, very costly. So the smartest way to do it would be if you have an ad that's already tried and proven, and I'm talking about the copy, I'm talking about the image, I'm talking about the offer. If you have all those three things down, let's say it's working on a platform like Facebook, the advantage of advertising on LinkedIn, Brad, is the precision of the targeting. You can really, really get precise. And if you're offering something that's a really high-end product or service, then you can start seeing that return on investment with the LinkedIn advertising. So, but again, most of what I teach, and this is for a reason, is organic. So that means most business owners shouldn't be, unless they have huge budgets and a very high-end product or service that they're offering, just advertising on LinkedIn, the ROI isn't there quite yet. And so there's a lot more nuances. There are a lot of different scenarios that we could get into. Another thing that I like about LinkedIn advertising, one recent change, they have these things called lead ads. So Facebook offers lead ads where people don't have to go to a landing page anymore to enter their contact information. LinkedIn offers that option as well. So that can be a powerful tool as well. Once again, though, the offer has to be right, the targeting has to be precise, and the copy and the creative has to be there as well. And another thing about LinkedIn ads, just to kind of answer your question here a little more elaborately, is you have to make sure that you see what people are seeing on mobile, because most LinkedIn users will be scrolling on mobile. So make sure that your mobile ad is refined first and foremost before even the desktop ad. And the initial copy that people will see on mobile is going to be a lot less than people would see on a Facebook ad. So definitely keep that in mind. Spacing and character limits are different as well. So really, there's a lot of nuances. There's a lot of advanced strategies that go into it. And most people, quite frankly, shouldn't be doing it. If you are doing it, just keep those points in mind.
Okay. So then let's take my profile, for example, and let's say, I want my profile to be more visible. And I know that there's, one thing we'll probably talk about is my posts and my articles. But maybe just speak to, some of the algorithms and the way that LinkedIn promotes content or people. And what are some things that I can do to be more visible?
Well, you've got to start with going wide. And what do I mean by going wide? So when I say go wide, the first thing, so many people still don't do this, make sure you take all your contacts from real life who already know you from Facebook, from in person, from your email contacts, and you can import them even directly from your phone into LinkedIn so that you're connected with them. You want to make sure you get past that 500 connection mark, because what happens, LinkedIn really emphasizes the degrees of separation. So let's say you and I have at least one mutual connection on LinkedIn, and a connection on LinkedIn is just a fancy term for like a friend. So just in case anyone's confused. And so let's say you and I, Brad, we had one mutual connection, then you and I would be second degree connections. Yeah. If we had zero mutual connections, we'd be third degree connections. If you and I were connected on LinkedIn, we would be considered first degree connections. So you want to get to over 500 first degree connections as quickly as possible, because then you'll literally have tens of thousands of so-called second degree connections who will be much more likely to accept your request, and LinkedIn will actually refer you to these people. It'll say people you may know, and it'll show your picture and your headline. That's why it's important to get those things dialed in, because you want to drive traffic to your profile. It's almost its own marketing funnel, which is really kind of one of those neat things. That's the first thing you want to do. You want to have the mindset of going wide. You want to make sure that you're connecting with the types of people that you want to connect with. And I have another article that I wrote about that. That's the key thing, There's really nobody. You also, on the flip side of that, you definitely want to screen people who send you connection requests. And what do I mean? There's really no con to having somebody connect with you, right? If I'm connected with whoever in whatever country, there's nothing that's going to necessarily be detrimental to my LinkedIn presence, except if they're constantly spamming me. That's going to be annoying. So what I do, I have a vetting process. It's a very simple process. I'll give this to you right here, right now. So when someone sends me a connection request, always, and I do this on Facebook too, I accept, or I have an assistant accept and say, hi, whatever their name is, thanks for connecting. How did you hear about me, or what made you want to connect? And if people aren't willing to engage or answer that question, sometimes I'll just delete them from my network. In general, though, it's good to have more connections, because that increases your amount of second degree connections. And when you're running different sorts of campaigns, when you're doing different sorts of targeting, that makes it much easier to grow that network with relevant prospects and potential strategic partners.
Yeah. Okay. So go wide. Let's talk about, is there anything that I can do before I start posting or putting articles? Is there anything I can do to get my profile seen in front of certain people? Is there like a title that gets searched more? Anything like that can help me connect with my audience?
It's still, to my knowledge, old-fashioned. So in your experience section, you want to repeat certain words that you want to get found for. So a sneaky way to do it, it's actually a not so sneaky way. It still works though. So here's what you want to do. You want to list certain skills and list them in multiple sections. Let's say you want to be known for the word startup. You list that 5 different places, you'll be more likely to come up. Geography is also important. A lot of people do business in a certain territory, so having that location multiple times will help as well. You also want to make sure you populate your profile. So LinkedIn wants you to fill out your experience section, fill out your summary, make sure you include things on your profile. That'll help you get found as well. And those are a couple big things. Also recognize that LinkedIn has very powerful SEO capability. So LinkedIn and Google, unlike Google and Facebook, who have a terrible relationship, LinkedIn and Google at the moment have an amazing relationship. So a lot of the times when someone Googles your name, the first thing or one of the first things that comes up will be your LinkedIn profile. So keep that in mind as well. It's important to have that filled out and not just have a resume to really transform it into that magnet that we were talking about earlier.
Okay, so let's talk about articles and posts. I wrote one article, and I remember it seemed to catch a track, and it was viewed and it was commented on. It just got so much more attention than a bunch of the other ones I had written that seemed to me kind of in the same wheelhouse as far as people who knew who I was and et cetera. So are there algorithms at play there, or did I just pick the right keyword? What are some of the things that I can do to get my content viewed by more people?
Well, the algorithm on LinkedIn is different than any other social media. What's really neat about it is if you and I, Brad, if we're connected and you like one of my articles, people in your network are going to see my article who aren't connected with me. That's going to give them an opportunity to do a few things. Number one, be exposed to my content and my marketing. Number two, if I've done my article the right way, be called to action to take me up on whatever offer there is in the article. And number three, just to be aware of who I am. And now it's a very subtle referral, because by you engaging with my article, I've received a little bit of credibility. People already have a relationship with you. So I absolutely love LinkedIn's algorithm. To talk about best practices for publishing articles. And first of all, if we're talking about just plain views, the posts that get the most views usually aren't articles. And with articles, you want to take the views you get with a grain of salt. I'd rather have less views and have them be quality views from people who could potentially do business with me than have thousands of views from randos. That's my perspective. And I'll give you an example. I was speaking with a client, and he was in the tech space, and he and I were talking, and was looking at his articles. He had one article that received a few thousand views, I believe. And I asked him, so how much business did you get out of it? And he thought a moment, and he said, none that I can remember. So it just goes to show, you want articles, you want to create content that sells. That's a good way to put it. So great content that also calls the audience to action and also sells. As far as really taking advantage of the platform, LinkedIn has something built in called LinkedIn Publisher. And what you can do is you can apply a couple of these best practices. Number one, your headline is huge. You want to be precise, you want to be short, and you really want to have those words that are going to give your audience, either get people to click on that article and actually read it and give it a like. So, for example, I had an article called How to Turn Your LinkedIn Connections into Cash. Like something really simple, really catchy, and that was one of those that did really well. And so that's the big thing, your photo, your picture as well. I see so many people applying stock photos to their LinkedIn articles. What I do for my articles, and I usually publish about 2 a week, and so what I do is I take movie photos, and as long as the article isn't directly about the movie, you'll probably be fine as far as copyright, and LinkedIn allows you to give photo credit too. So haven't heard of anyone experiencing issues with that as well. So I'll take, a common movie or celebrity or something from pop culture that people are going to resonate with, and I'll use that as my photo, because people will have that familiarity psychologically. That's one way to trigger them to take action, actually read the article. So those two things are huge. You want to get people clicking on the article. When you post the article, a sentence or two about what's in the article, just so when people see it in their news feeds. Also, you want to include hashtags. Hashtags on LinkedIn are a funny thing because they work. At the same time, they don't get used too much, so they're kind of a hit or miss. I always try to include a handful just in case someone searches for the hashtag on LinkedIn, or you just never know with LinkedIn's SEO. It's one of the best practices to include 5 precise hashtags. And so when you publish the article, also you want to make sure you do a couple things. You want to make sure that you're not clumping everything, right? So you want to make sure that you're not writing big clunky paragraphs. We're so ADD this day and age that you want to make sure that people don't see it as long and overwhelming. So try to keep your paragraphs 3 to 4 sentences at most, really short, concise paragraphs. Also, the article has to be, again, content that sells. I wouldn't recommend anything that's super dense for the LinkedIn article. Tell a story. I always try to open with a story, or open with something anecdotal that'll intrigue the person to continue reading. Also, spacing is key. Using headlines, subheadlines within the article is important as well. And at the end, you want to make sure you have the right call to action. So that call to action is usually driving people to a landing page where they can enter their contact information in exchange for something. And some people offer consultations, some people offer PDFs, and there's a wide range of things you can offer. It's important to have that on every single article. That's absolutely huge. And also, the last thing that I'll say about articles for now is you want to have a blurb at the end that says a little bit about you, and write that one in third person. Everything on my LinkedIn profile is in first person except for that blurb in the article. So it's 2 to 3 sentences, what's in it, just a little more about you, what you do, who you are, and then a clear call to action. Once again, you can restate the same call to action. Have that at the bottom of each article. And you do that, you hit publish, and you've got an article that's pretty much an asset for you. It's going to be on your profile forever.
Yeah. How about, an inside, let's kind of fast forward to an organization that has a sales team, and you're working with, I think LinkedIn's a great way to find out who the players are in an organization. But I've heard strategies around you make a call, you get a hold of somebody at a company, you pitch them on a demo or your product, and then you add them as a friend or as a connection on LinkedIn. Can you give any insight into that strategy, any data that supports that's a good idea, bad idea?
Well, it's a smart thing to do. I'll give you the most fundamental piece of data. In sales, it usually takes multiple touches before a transaction occurs. So we want to build that know, like, and trust. And what's an easier way to make a touch than to send someone a connection request on LinkedIn and add a note, hey, so-and-so, it was a pleasure speaking with you, looking forward to our appointment on whatever. Yeah. So especially when you've really refined your profile, once again, that profile is really the foundation because that's so important. When you've done what you need to do with your profile, and I see a lot of people from huge companies who are sales, executives, account executives, who looking on their profile, I have no idea the value their company provides or what the company does. All I see is that they've made President's Club, and that's great. If I'm a prospect, though, I don't care. I care about what the value is that their company provides. So that's a huge thing as well, is making sure that profile is up to par. And yeah, it's a great way to establish another touch and, add to the relationship, add to the follow-up. And there's all sorts of different things you can do as well. Another way to make an easy touch, if your prospect posts something, give it a like, give it a comment. You can chat with people that way. When I teach prospecting, one thing that I teach is when you connect with somebody on LinkedIn, instead of starting with a direct message, how about you engage with their content, see if they're posting stuff? Because the engagement on LinkedIn when compared to other platforms is way, way less. So you want to grab someone's attention on LinkedIn, especially if it's an influencer, start engaging on their content. That's going to trigger them to do a couple things. It's a much easier, more user-friendly place for them to respond out in the open than, it's just like the analogy of meeting someone at a networking event. Let's say you and I met at a networking event, and right away I said, hey, do you want to go in that other room, sit down, close the door, and have a business conversation? You'd say, hell no, right? You'd run the other way. Right. It's what a lot of people are trying to do on LinkedIn. So instead, talk a little bit, learn about them, engage, and then guess what they're usually going to do? Because once again, they're human. They'll go to your profile. And if that profile is up to par, they'll start to get an understanding and a grasp of what it is and the value that you can provide. So those are a couple of best practices for starting those relationships. Yeah, for sure. And another great thing that I do on Twitter a lot is mention those people, promote their content, right? And it puts you on their radar. They're like, who's this person that's reading my stuff and advocating for it, right? So it's a great strategy. Okay, well, before we go, let's talk a little bit about your book. Let's talk about the launch and some of the ways that we can connect with you. Yeah, so the book is coming out here mid-August. The book is called Disrupting LinkedIn, The Definitive Guide to Generating Leads, Receiving Referrals, and Attracting High-End Clients Through Marketing on LinkedIn. And it's really about the strategies that I teach. It tells a little bit about my story, and it's a new way of marketing on LinkedIn. So when you read the book, what you'll discover is you'll hear about strategies, you'll hear about concepts that you probably haven't heard before. Even if you've studied, there's the concept out there of social selling. My stuff, as you'll discover, is a little bit different. It takes those concepts and it really connects them with marketing to have the most solid and consistent piece. So The book is going to be out. I really wanted to get this out there because it's something. Everything in that book is based on experience. There's nothing in that book that's just a theory that sounds good on paper. Everything is either something that I've implemented, or my clients have implemented, or I've seen other people implement. So
Cool.
those three things are the criteria for everything in that book. And while that book, I made sure that it's easy to read and that it flows smoothly, there's a ton of practical information, a ton of great content and great value out there. And that book's going to be on Amazon, and I'm sure we can get some links up as well. I'm sure it'll be on my website, which is linkedleads.us, and I'll be talking a lot more about the group. I have a free Facebook group, and by the way, the group is a Facebook group for a reason. That it's not a LinkedIn group, because LinkedIn groups right now are still kind of a ghost town. They're kind of dead. So that part of my marketing funnel is the Facebook group. So it's a great group. There's a lot of value. We put an entertaining spin on this whole LinkedIn marketing thing, and the name of the group is Disrupting LinkedIn as well. So we can put up a link. It's a free group for people to join. And I'll have more about the book in there as well. So Disrupting LinkedIn. And people, I have a free quiz as well. So if you go to linkedleads.us/quiz, you can actually see how your profile stacks up based on the criteria that's part of my profile formula. So not only will you see how your profile stacks up when you take the quiz, you'll also have some ideas for refining your profile and starting to turn into that magnet for attracting your ideal clients.
Awesome. Well, you've put a ton of content out on LinkedIn. I think it's a great way for people to check you out, connect with you, and just get a sense for a lot of the stuff that you do. And we've just scratched the surface on what I think are just some really helpful, obvious tips that people can do. But LinkedIn absolutely needs to be part of your strategy, regardless of how it might fit in the funnel. But an absolute pleasure, and it's refreshing to kind of dig into some of the strategies that I think, like myself, I just scratched the surface on what's really possible with LinkedIn. So you've given me some food for thought for sure. So I appreciate you taking a few minutes to walk us through that.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Founders Podcast, and a special thanks to Yakov for joining me on this week's episode. Lots of great content, and we'll be back next week with Jace Vernon, founder of YDraw, and some of the most powerful marketing strategies and storytelling that you can introduce into your growth strategy. So looking forward to next week. If you haven't yet, subscribe to the show and check us out at salesfounders.com, where you can find access to show notes as well as opportunities to connect with our guests. We have a special Facebook group for our Sales Founders podcast. Check that out by going to salesfounders.com/group. And we invite you, as usual, to share episodes out with entrepreneurs in your network. We appreciate you listening, and we'll look forward to talking to you on the next episode of Sales Founders.